It was supposed to be a quiet, perfect evening, the kind of night that might finally change everything. I had spent the whole afternoon in our small Portland kitchen, carefully preparing Dylan's favorite dinner: creamy truffle mushroom risotto, garlic roasted asparagus, and a freshly baked sourdough loaf I'd made from scratch the night before. I even lit candles, set the table with the good plates. Everything was intentional, precise, because tonight I was going to tell him. I was pregnant, 6 weeks along, our baby growing quietly inside me. He didn't know yet. No one did. Well, except for the woman who ruined it all. Joanne. Dylan's mother had moved in with us 9 months ago after her divorce. She said it was temporary, that she just needed a place to get back on her feet. But instead of healing, she had slowly poisoned the air inside our home. And tonight, she was the only variable I hadn't been able to control. She invited herself to dinner, brushing past my protest with a cool, "Family dinners are important, dear, especially when you've got secrets you think you're hiding so well." That should have been my first warning. I was already nauseous from the pregnancy, the kind of unrelenting sickness that doesn't wait until morning. But I pushed through, hoping tonight would be different. Hoping this meal, this night, this announcement might finally soften her, might make her see me. Instead, it broke me. I still remember the sound of her heels clicking against the hardwood as she walked toward Dylan. Just as I brought out the risotto, she placed a manicured hand on his shoulder and leaned in, whispering something too soft for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear it, because I saw his face. It changed in real time, from calm to furious, as if someone had flipped a switch inside him. His warm brown eyes went cold. His jaw clenched. He stood, so abruptly his chair screeched across the floor. "Is this true?" he demanded, staring straight at me. "You've been lying to me?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Maya. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Before I could even process the words, his hand shot out. The slap came fast and sharp. I barely registered the sting before I was stumbling backward, hitting the wall behind me. My vision blurred. My cheek burned. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then came the nausea, violent, involuntary. My stomach clenched, and in front of both of them, I threw up. Dylan recoiled, disgust etched across his face. "Maya, what the hell?" His words cut off when he saw something fall from my purse, which had tipped over in the chaos. A small pink stick. He reached down, picked it up, and looked at the tiny window. 2 lines. His face drained of color. "Is this?" I was still on the floor, clutching my stomach with one hand, the other covering my burning cheek. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm pregnant." Silence. For one long, suffocating moment. The only sound in the room was the sizzle of asparagus still crisping in the oven. Joanne said nothing. Her lips were pursed into a thin, satisfied line. But even she hadn't expected this. Dylan looked at the pregnancy test, then at me, then at his hand. "Oh my God," he murmured. "Maya," he stepped forward. I flinched. He stopped. The man who had once held my hair when I had food poisoning, who used to leave me notes in my lunchbox, who promised to love and protect me in front of our families, had just struck me while I was carrying his child. Everything I thought I knew about him shattered in that instant. Then came the sound that would change everything. The front door creaked open. Tessa, our neighbor, stood in the doorway, her eyes wide, breath catching when she saw my red cheek and the wreckage around us. "I heard shouting," she said slowly, eyes scanning Dylan, then Joanne. "Is everything okay in here?" I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say the word yet. No, nothing was okay, and I didn't know if it ever would be again. I met Dylan on a rainy Friday afternoon at Juniper and Brew, the cozy little cafe tucked between Powell's bookstore and the old movie theater on 11th. I was sitting near the window, grading a stack of children's books for the library's reading program, when a man juggling 2 iced coffees and a phone in his mouth stumbled past my table. and knocked over my entire pile of paperwork. "Oh, God, no, no! I'm so sorry," he said, voice muffled by the phone he tossed aside to grab napkins. "Please don't hate me. I swear I'm not usually this clumsy." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because he looked so genuinely horrified. His efforts to blot the papers were hopeless, but endearing. A complete stranger, apologizing over and over, red in the face, trying to save a worksheet about dinosaurs. "Let me make it up to you," he pleaded. "Coffee? Dinner? A new stack of children's books." I remember looking at him, tall, messy hair, kind eyes, and saying, "Start with dinner." That was the beginning. Dylan was golden. Kind, attentive, funny in a way that didn't need to be loud. He was an architect with a deep love for old houses and a habit of sketching people when he thought they weren't looking. He called me fascinating, treated my job at the public library like it was the most noble profession in the world. We got married a year later, in the fall, beneath a canopy of turning leaves. Our vows were quiet, honest, and filled with laughter. We bought a small house on the east side, old but full of charm, and talked about having children someday. On weekends, we wandered farmers markets, planned trips we couldn't afford, made slow breakfasts in our pajamas. It was simple. It was good. It was real. Until she moved in. "It's just temporary," Dylan said when Joanne called crying, 2 suitcases packed and nowhere to go after her second divorce. "She's heartbroken, Maya. She just needs a little time." I wanted to be understanding. I really did. But even from the beginning, Joanne made it clear I was not what she had imagined for her son. She never said it directly. That wasn't her style. Instead, it was small things. "Are you sure that's what you're wearing, dear? This risotto's a bit underseasoned, don't you think? Dylan works so hard. You should really give him more protein." She rearranged my spice rack while I was at work. Told me which laundry detergent Dylan used to prefer. Left passive-aggressive sticky notes about how to fold his t-shirts. At first, Dylan brushed it off. "That's just Mom," he said. "She doesn't mean anything by it." But slowly, her influence crept deeper. He started noticing things he'd never commented on before. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the time I spent on calls with my sister, my grocery choices, and those little criticisms. They always followed long, whispered conversations between him and Joanne, behind closed doors, over cups of tea late at night. Once, I overheard her on the phone. "She hides things, Dylan. I've seen her sneaking off to the bathroom. Probably stress. Or something else. Are you sure she's not keeping secrets?" My blood went cold. At the time, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe Dylan knew better, that he loved me enough to see through her need for control. But with every passing month, it got harder to tell where her voice ended and his began. Then, 3 weeks ago, I found out I was pregnant. And for a moment, everything else faded. I wanted to believe it would change things, that maybe this would be the moment he'd come back to me, that the man I married still lived somewhere inside him. But Joanne was always one step ahead. Looking back now, I realized Joanne never needed proof. She only needed doubt. And once that seed was planted in Dylan's mind, she watered it every day. I started noticing how quiet he became after speaking with her, how his eyes lingered a little longer when I said I was tired, how he'd glance sideways when I came back from the bathroom. The warmth in our conversations was gone, replaced by pauses, suspicions, and silence. Then came the night I caught Joanne eavesdropping. I had just returned home from work at the library, head pounding from nausea I couldn't explain away anymore. I went straight to the bathroom, as I had so many times lately, and closed the door. When I stepped out, there she was, Joanne, standing by the hallway, eyes narrowed like a hawk. "You've been running to the bathroom at odd hours," she said coolly. "Anything you want to share?" I forced a smile. "Just stress." She raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I had that same stress before I found out I was pregnant with Dylan." I walked past her without replying, but her meaning was crystal clear. From that day forward, her behavior shifted into something sharper, more pointed. She began checking the trash cans. Just organizing, she claimed. She hovered while I cooked, criticized how long I left food on the stove. "Smells like someone's hiding something," she'd mutter, loud enough for Dylan to hear. And he did. He'd enter the room with that same tight jaw, ask if I was feeling okay, ask again and again why I'd been distant if I had something to say. But how could I? I wanted to tell him about the baby. I had this dream in my head, me, him, our favorite meal, candles glowing, and a little onesie in a gift box. That's how I wanted him to find out. Just the two of us, before the world and before his mother got involved. But fear kept stopping me. Not just fear of his reaction, but fear that he wasn't really him anymore, that he had become her. That maybe if she told him the sky was green and I was lying, he'd believe it. So I waited. I kept saltine crackers in my library desk drawer, claiming I was just cutting back on sweets. I blamed my exhaustion on a book drive. I told myself I just needed a few more days, a perfect moment, one quiet night where we could be alone, where maybe I'd feel safe again. That moment never came. Instead, Joanne made sure of it. It was a Wednesday. Rain clung to the windows like it always did in early spring. I was in the kitchen layering the truffle risotto, heart pounding, stomach churning, nerves tangled in 1,000 knots. The onesie, white with tiny forest animals, was hidden in a gift box by the table. I kept glancing at it, imagining Dylan's face when he opened it. But then I heard her voice. She was in the living room, on the phone. I couldn't hear everything, but the words I caught were enough. "She's hiding something, I know it. Probably having an affair, running off every chance she gets. My son deserves better than that." My hands shook as I set the dish in the oven. An affair? Is that what she told him? Is that what she whispered in his ear? It all made sense, his growing coldness, the way he flinched when I touched him, the way his questions turned from curious to accusatory. She was poisoning him against me, not with facts, but with fear, with manipulation dressed as maternal concern. And worse, he believed her. I stared at the oven timer, watching the seconds tick down, feeling the weight of every second I had stayed silent, every second I had tried to keep the peace, every time I swallowed my instincts and played nice. And I knew, deep down, that whatever happened at dinner that night would change everything. I just didn't realize how fast everything would fall apart. The next few hours after that night were a blur, of tears, of pain, of disbelief. Tessa didn't ask questions. She just grabbed my coat, my bag, and gently guided me out the door, shielding me from Dylan's stunned expression and Joanne's sharp voice echoing behind us. "She's overreacting, Dylan. You know how women get when they're hormonal." But the door slammed shut behind me, and suddenly silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. My ears rang from the slap. My body trembled from adrenaline and morning sickness. And my heart was cracking in places I didn't know existed. Tessa lived just across the street. Her guest room had once been a cheerful space for her niece, with lavender sheets and string lights around the window. That night, I collapsed onto the bed and curled into myself, clutching my stomach, terrified I might have harmed the tiny life inside me. "I called your doctor," Tessa said gently. "They'll see you first thing tomorrow." I nodded, unable to speak. The next morning, she drove me, held my hand in the waiting room, rubbed my back when I broke down trying to explain what happened. I'll never forget the moment the ultrasound monitor lit up. A small flutter, then the sound, strong, steady, beautiful, the heartbeat of a life not yet born, but already loved. Tears slid silently down my cheeks, not from fear or sadness, from something deeper. The sound wrapped around my broken heart and held it together, just enough. "Do you want me to record it?" the nurse asked gently. I nodded. That night, wrapped in one of Tessa's oversized sweatshirts, sitting on the edge of the guest bed, I stared at my phone for a long time. I had promised myself I wouldn't contact him. Not after what he did. Not after how quickly he believed her. But the sound of that heartbeat, it wasn't mine to carry alone. I opened the audio file, pressed play once, closed my eyes, then attached it in a message. Your child's heartbeat. That was all I wrote. No anger, no guilt, no explanations, just the truth. His reply came within minutes. Please, can we talk? Just us. No, Mom. Please, Maya. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. My cheek was still tender, the bruise blooming yellow beneath the surface. But I wasn't doing this for him. I was doing it for the baby. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed to look into his eyes and see who was still in there if anyone was left. I typed back, tomorrow, 2 p.m., Juniper and Brew. You show up with her, I walk away forever. I won't, he replied. I swear. I'm choosing you this time. The next morning, I stood in front of the cafe where we first met, shivering not from the cold, but from everything that still ached inside me. Tessa was parked across the street, engine running, eyes locked on me from behind the wheel. My lifeline, just in case. At 2 p.m., sharp, the cafe bell chimed. Dylan walked in, alone. No coat, just a faded blue shirt and eyes sunken with sleepless nights. He paused when he saw me, like he wasn't sure I'd really come. Neither was I. But I had. For me. For the child inside me. For the version of myself that refused to be broken. Can I sit? He asked quietly. I nodded, even as my whole body screamed to run. He sat, but this time not close. He kept distance, kept his hands on the table. His voice, when he finally spoke, was hoarse. I kicked her out last night, he said. Joanne. She's staying at a hotel. I packed her bags myself. I said nothing, because actions are louder than words, and I needed to see more. I didn't touch my tea. It sat between us like a boundary, steam rising between two people who once shared everything and now shared nothing but silence. Dylan looked thinner, tired. The stubble on his jaw was new, and his shirt was wrinkled. Same one he'd worn the night it happened. His hands were clenched together on the table, knuckles white. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. For everything. For believing her. For not asking you. For what I did. I stayed quiet. After you left, he continued, I found her on the phone with one of her friends, laughing, saying she'd finally saved me from your lies. She said it loud enough that I knew. She made it all up. She twisted everything. My fingers trembled under the table, but I forced my voice to stay steady. And you hit me because of her. Dylan's eyes filled with tears. I know. And there's no excuse. I believed her because somewhere deep down I let myself. I let her control me for so long, I didn't even see it. I stared at him. The man who once made me laugh, so hard I cried. The man who promised to protect me. The man who had used his hand, not to hold me, but to hurt me. I need you to understand something, I said slowly. You didn't just hit me. You hit us. His eyes dropped to my stomach. I know, he whispered. I do. And I hate myself for it. Then prove it. He looked up, startled. I continued. I have conditions. If you break even one, I'm done. I don't care how sorry you are. I won't raise our child in fear. He nodded once. Okay. 1. Your mother never sets foot in our house again. Not for holidays. Not for visits. Not at the hospital. Nothing. She gets no information about the baby. No photos. No updates. Done. 2. You go to therapy. Alone. Every week. And we do couples counseling too. You start immediately. I already had my first session yesterday. 3, I said, leaning in, my voice like ice. If you ever raise a hand to me again, even once, I will press charges and file for full custody. No second chances. His shoulders dropped, shame folding his body. I wouldn't blame you, he said, then reached into his pocket and slid something across the table. A business card family law attorney. I already asked her to draft custody papers, he said. If I ever get violent again, you get full custody. No fight, no court. It's in writing. My throat closed up. He was serious. For the first time in weeks, I saw something real in his eyes. Not just guilt, but the will to change. The man I married, buried under layers of control and denial, clawing his way out. Still, I didn't relax. Because words are easy. Change isn't. I'm not coming home, I said quietly. Not yet. He nodded. I understand. And we don't do anything until counseling begins. Already booked, he replied, sliding another card toward me. Dr. Reena Patel, trauma-informed, couples counseling. I don't want promises, Dylan, I said. I want proof. Over time. You don't get to earn me back in a day. His voice cracked. Whatever you need. I took a breath. A long, hard breath. Then here's what I need next, I said. The next doctor's appointment. You can come. His face lit up like I'd handed him the sun. But Tessa comes too, I added. I'm not ready to be alone with you, yet. Of course, he nodded quickly. Anything that makes you feel safe. For the first time since that night, I allowed myself a flicker of something fragile. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of something else. Something stronger. Respect. Boundaries. Accountability. As we stood up to leave, Dylan glanced at me one last time. I should have chosen you from the beginning. No, I said softly. You should have chosen yourself, and unlearned everything she ever taught you. Then I walked out first. And this time he didn't try to follow. It started with a text. Dylan, your mother's outside my library. I was sitting at my desk in the youth wing, organizing new arrivals for the spring reading program, when I saw the silver Lexus SUV parked across the street. Engine running. Joanne in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, unmoving. Watching. My third graders were out back for an author visit, so it was just me inside. My hands trembled as I typed the message. She's been there 20 minutes. Just watching the front door. His reply came fast. Don't move. I'm calling the police. 15 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. From behind the library blinds, I watched as they approached her car. Joanne immediately turned on the tears. Trembling hands, cracking voice, the perfect victim. I'm just worried about my son, she said, loud enough that I could hear her through the glass. His wife is unstable. She's keeping me from my grandchild. Then her tone shifted, sharp as a knife. She trapped him with that baby. She's poisoning him against me. Ashley, the library assistant, stood beside me, eyes wide. Want me to film this? She whispered. You mentioned you might need evidence for that restraining order. I nodded. My fingers clenched the windowsill. But my heart had already begun to shift. Not with fear, but with clarity. This was who Dylan had grown up with. That night, during our couples session with Dr. Patel, I showed Dylan the footage. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the screen, hands pressed to his forehead, eyes glassy. I never saw it before, he whispered. She's exactly like when Dad left. She'd scream, cry, make herself the victim, and I always believed her version. Dr. Patel's voice was calm, steady. Generational patterns of emotional abuse are hard to break, Dylan. But every time you choose Maya over her manipulation, you're breaking the cycle. He turned to me. I want that cycle broken before our daughter is born. And just like that, it became real. Our daughter. The next week, I had another ultrasound. Tessa drove me to the clinic, and Dylan followed behind in his car. A precaution we'd agreed on. Boundaries still mattered. Safety still mattered. Inside, the technician smiled as she slid the gel across my stomach. Would you like to know the gender? She asked. I looked at Dylan. For the first time in months, I saw hope in his face instead of guilt. I nodded. It's a girl. My breath caught. A girl. A tiny future already growing inside me. I reached instinctively for my belly, and for the first time, Dylan reached across the space between us, and I let him. His fingers brushed mine. Gentle. Careful. She'll never know this kind of fear, he whispered. Not while I'm breathing. But Joanne wasn't done. As Tessa and I walked back to the car, we saw her leaning against her SUV in the parking lot. Her lipstick perfect, her eyes cold. Before I could react, Dylan stepped between us. He hadn't even hesitated. Leave, he said. Now. I have a right to know about my granddaughter, she snapped. You can't cut me out. You lost that right the day you made me hurt her mother. Joanne's face twisted. She's turning you against me, just like your father. She's tearing this family apart. Security is on their way, Tessa interrupted calmly, holding up her phone. The clinic's already been notified. Joanne's eyes darted from me to Dylan, to Tessa and back again, but something in her flickered. She realized, maybe for the first time, that she had lost. She backed away slowly, heels clicking, voice tight with rage. This isn't over. But we knew it was, because this time we were the ones drawing the line. That night, back in Tessa's guest room, I sat by the door. Dylan wasn't allowed to stay yet, we still weren't ready, but he sat outside, just on the other side of the wall. I filed for the restraining order, he said softly through the door, for all three of us. My hand moved to my belly. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel in weeks. Not just hope, but safety. I returned home in the 5th month of my pregnancy. Tessa helped me pack, folded my maternity clothes with quiet care, like each shirt was a choice I had made for myself. Are you sure about this? She asked as we zipped up the last suitcase. No, I admitted, but I need to try. Not for him, for her. The drive back felt longer than it should have. My hands trembled slightly on my lap as we pulled up to the house. The same house where I had been slapped, humiliated, gaslit. But when I stepped inside, everything had changed. Joanne's things were gone. No more crystal figurines glaring from the mantel. No more homemade potpourri that made my eyes sting. No more photos of Dylan as a child with a handwritten note that said, "My little man, always mine." Even the walls had changed. Dylan had painted them soft yellows and greens, the same shades we'd picked for the nursery years ago, back when having children still felt like a shared dream. I got rid of the dining room table, he said quietly, appearing in the hallway like a shadow, learning how to stand in the light. Didn't want you to have to look at it every day. In its place stood a round oak table, warm, welcoming, no head of the table, no hierarchy, no throne for his mother to hold court from. Everything felt softer, but I didn't unpack everything. Not yet. We created new routines. Dylan would text before coming home, even if it was just from work. We cooked together, small things. He never assumed, never acted like he was entitled to closeness. He knew now everything was earned. Every decision about our baby was made together. No whispers, no interference. And then came the first test. At 7 months, a package arrived at my workplace, beautifully wrapped with a silver ribbon. Inside was an antique rattle, heavy, cold, engraved with EMW, Elena Maya Walker, our baby's initials. There was no note inside, just a small card slipped underneath the tissue paper. Blood is thicker than restraining orders. I stood there in the staff room, holding that message like it was a loaded weapon. I didn't cry. I took a photo, sent it to Dylan, and 20 minutes later, he showed up at the library, the rattle in hand, marching straight to our lawyer's office. She's testing boundaries, he told the attorney. I want that documented. That night, he found me in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair we'd assembled the weekend before, hands pressed to my belly. I'm scared, I whispered. What if she never stops? Then we never stop either, he said. Every time she pushes, we push back, with truth, with the law, with each other. I won't let her near our daughter. We met with Dr. Patel the next morning to build a full safety plan. We created new passwords for daycare pickup, installed security cameras, informed neighbors and friends. Even Tessa's partner Tom, a local police officer, agreed to be our emergency contact. Every step made me breathe a little easier. Then we got a call from the hospital. Someone had been calling, pretending to be my mother, asking about my birth plan. "Joanne, I'll change the registration," Dylan said instantly. "Different hospital. I'll register you under Tessa's address. No one else will know." I nodded, throat tight with anxiety. But I couldn't ignore what I saw in him now. How fast he moved, how thoroughly he protected. How different he was from the man who once stood silent while I cried in our kitchen. "You're doing the work, Dr. Patel said in our next session. "Both of you. That's what matters." And it did, because the nursery we built together wasn't just a room. It was a symbol of reclaimed space, of healing, of the kind of love we wanted our daughter to know. Not the love that controlled, but the love that protected. Labor began at 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow tightening across my lower back that grew more frequent with each hour. By 4 o'clock, I woke Dylan. By 4:05, he was already in motion. He followed the plan exactly. Tessa was called, the hospital bag already in the trunk, the car seat secured, the cameras on, front door locked, back door double-checked. No signs of the silver Lexus. We drove to the new hospital registered under Tessa's address. Private maternity wing. Security briefed. Our OB already waiting. The delivery room was nothing like what I had feared. No screaming. No chaos. Just steady breathing. A hand holding mine. Dylan at my side. Tessa just outside the door like a sentinel. 12 hours later, after what felt like a lifetime of contractions and clenched jaws and whispered encouragement, our daughter arrived. Elena Maya Walker. Tiny, pink, lungs screaming with life. A perfect cry. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that opened wide before the nurse could even wrap her in the soft, green blanket. Dylan sobbed. He didn't even try to hide it. "She's perfect," he whispered, touching her foot gently. "She looks just like you." I held her against my chest, heart wide open, arms trembling not from exhaustion, but from love that cracked through every scar, every bruise, every broken moment before this. This was ours. This was what we fought for, until someone tried to take it again. An hour later, a nurse walked in holding a bouquet. White lilies, a simple card, to my first granddaughter. She'll need her grandmother soon enough. Blood is forever. Jay, I stared the message. It wasn't anger I felt. It was finality. "Give this to security," I said calmly. "Have them flag the name. Anyone who delivers on her behalf, we want documented." The nurse nodded and left. Dylan didn't say a word, just stood, holding Elena's tiny hand, eyes hard with resolve. That night, Tom, Tessa's partner and our emergency contact, took the night shift outside our hospital room. He stood near the door like a quiet shadow, sipping coffee and scrolling his phone, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. But there was none, because Joanne knew. She had no power here anymore. 3 days later, we came home, not just to a house, but to a new life. The locks were changed, security reinforced, the nursery lit with soft morning sun, and a wall of hand-painted woodland animals Dylan had stayed up late to finish. "Welcome home, Elena," I whispered as I carried her in. The first nights were hard. Diaper changes, late feedings, exhaustion that blurred the days. But in between the chaos, there were quiet moments of peace. Moments where Dylan would rock her to sleep humming lullabies. Moments where we laughed when she sneezed mid-yawn. Moments where I looked around the nursery and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. At Elena's 1-month checkup, the pediatrician smiled. "She's thriving," she said. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." And we did, together. One quiet afternoon, as I sat in the nursery folding laundry, Dylan returned from the grocery store, silent. He stood in the doorway for a long time, Elena asleep in her bassinet beside me. "I saw her," he said finally, "at the store." My heart skipped. What happened? She tried to speak to me. I walked away, called the store manager, followed our plan. I exhaled. "And how do you feel?" I asked. "Sad," he admitted, "but steady." I didn't hesitate, Maya. Not once. She doesn't own any part of me anymore. He walked over, took my hand. "Our daughter will never have to unlearn the kind of love I grew up with," he said. "She'll only know the real kind, the kind that builds, that protects, that chooses over and over again." I looked at our child, sleeping, safe, surrounded by a future we carved out of wreckage. "You broke the cycle," I whispered. "No," he said. "We did." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the nursery walls in gold. We didn't just survive. We rebuilt. For her. And that made every scar worth it.